Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So, today we're going to cover the idea of grieving the thin ideal. This is something that a lot of fat activists talk about. It's a part of essentially a gaslighting campaign to try to convince you that it is impossible to lose weight. So what we're going to look at is demoralization within this movement. I'm going to try to do my best to look at it from the perspective of somebody who is starting to believe in fat acceptance and is maybe starting to fall down the rabbit hole. I'm going to try to keep that in mind because these kinds of pages and articles and things, there's something that somebody who's struggling in a lot of different ways may find. So I've noticed this a lot throughout certain points in my weight loss journey where there is a disbelief or a lack of faith that it will continue or that you can go on past a certain point or all these different things. And these messages are so heavily pushed that anytime a plateau occurs, it really freaks out, especially a super fat person, especially somebody who has struggled with toxic ritualistic mindsets. It can be very, very difficult, almost hurtful when you hit a plateau. So I try a lot to talk about my plateaus along this journey, and I try to show that they commonly happen and that it's not that big of a deal. And a lot of times it's water weight and whatever. You cannot magically produce fat without an excess of calories. I'll put it to you that way. So yeah, let's go ahead and look at this and see what they have to say. This is by Meredith Noble. Body acceptance begins with grieving the thin ideal. So there's an infographic here. It has this woman. She is thinking about these ideas like permanent weight loss isn't possible, diets don't work, and she's crying, and the thoughts is, but no, really? Like, she doesn't want to accept these truths that permanent weight loss isn't possible and diets don't work. So let's go ahead and look. Beginning down the health at every size, fat liberation, or body trust path can trigger a grieving process. In order to make peace with food and our bodies, we must give up old beliefs and a number of long-held hopes as well. So remember, this is a demoralization campaign. Okay, this is somebody who wants you to give up hope completely. And I always wonder how somebody can, in good conscience, I think, be aware of these health issues that are going on. Or when I think of this, I think of some of my worst moments health-wise when I was bigger, and think about having to give up hope that could ever get better. And it was very difficult, especially in the very beginning when I was just working on my hypothyroidism and I wasn't actually losing weight yet. That process took about 1.5 years, I believe. It took from March 2021 till August of 2022. And I started sustainably losing weight in August of 2022. So throughout a lot of that time, I struggled with this, and with certain set points that I've approached, I struggle with it, especially when I was bigger, because it was hard to believe that it would continue, that it could go on, and all these things. So it's like trying to discourage somebody from continuing before they get the benefit. It's very sick, in my opinion. For instance, we have to give up the idea that one day achieving the thin ideal, we have to give up the idea of one day achieving the thin ideal, as well as the idea that we can use food and exercise to control the size of our bodies. So this is a massive gaslighting sentence. This is completely, I don't even know how to say it. It's just gaslighting. I guess I'll just leave it at that. We also have to process the idea that we've devoted so much time and energy to achieving long-term weight loss without success, or perhaps with success, but copious amounts of misery. So this is also a lie. I always point out, it's a lie by omission. I always point out that when you are that big, you're miserable regardless of if you're losing weight or not. You just are. You typically are depressed. You typically have bad anxiety. In some cases, panic attacks. In some cases, severe hormone disruption from being super morbidly obese. You can have so many different problems, relationship issues, less empathy for others because your body's in a survival state. You can have issues with so many things. The list is so long, not to mention your typical mechanical stress on knees and joints and things like that, your breathing issues that come from being too big when you're trying to sleep, especially, and so many other issues that come from supermorbid obesity and, frankly, any form of obesity. It is miserable. So again, I think the real gaslight is that you can achieve long-term health or happiness being fat. That is the bigger myth, in my opinion. And that was something that I really had to consider and fully accept to completely get out of the toxic, ritualistic mindsets that I was in, was accepting that I wasn't going to be able to do other aspects of life effectively if my health was so poor. It was not going to be possible, and my health didn't have to be that poor. It didn't. But I understand the feeling of being in it and being completely hopeless. And that's what this article is directing itself towards. And that's what's so cruel. In order to truly heal, the vision of our ideal selves that we have carried for years and years has to come to an end. So this is a little bit more complicated. I think ideal is not good to focus on. I think it's really good to focus on the here and now. I think if you think about it more from a health perspective, like I did have to hold on to a health ideal or an idea that I could get my health back to the point where I could function again, because I didn't know if I could. And that was truly terrifying. But I would, along the journey, I would get glimpses of health. I could see, like, I described it as flecks of light in darkness, where I could see that there was hope, there was some kind of possibility that I could get better. And that hope carried me through some very difficult recovery processes, some hormonal roller coasters I had to go on to get better. You know, a lot of different things that I went through in my recovery journey from a very, very big size and extreme hypothyroidism. It was very difficult. So in that sense, that ideal did help me, but did I focus on how I would look? No. I don't think we should think of an ideal self. I'm very against that, because if you put an ideal self on a pedestal, if you start to not look like that, then you can either A, quit before you get to where you're going to go. B, you can relapse, because it can cause an anxiety response and it can cause you to go back to toxic ritualistic behaviors involving eating too much. So I don't think an ideal self is helpful from a looks perspective, but from a health perspective, it can be life-saving. Like, I think about a future where my asthma may improve. It may not, it may. I think about a future where my joint pain will continue to improve, where my breathing issues through sleep will continue to improve. I think about a future where I may be less restless. I have a lot of restlessness and things like that at this level of obesity. And I look towards the future and I have hope for it. I have hope that getting out of morbid obesity and obesity in general will improve these aspects. Yes, I deal with a sobering reality that there could be permanent damage from what I've done to my body over the years, but I also hold on to a hope that it could improve, especially from this vantage point, because it has improved. So I can have more hope now, but for people who haven't had any recovery, it can be really difficult. And once again, I will say articles like this can push people towards their death. Okay? Anyways, let's continue. Because most of us have believed in the thin ideal and the power of dieting for decades, it's only natural for some very strong emotions to be triggered when we realize we've been sold a lie. I remember when I first learned that permanent weight loss was not sustainable for most people. In a way, it was relieving because it confirmed my experiences up to that point. It was also very sad. I had convinced myself that if I could get and stay thin, life would be much, much easier for me. So I think this very much is a myth. I would say that it can be very much healthier. You can be much healthier. But easier is a different word with a different meaning. You know, oftentimes when we do better in life, we start to aspire for more, or we start to aspire for different things, and it can lead to a feeling of overwhelm or anxiety or fears or a lot of these different things. And also we can deal with criticisms from other people for being more successful. So it's not always easier. I think that is a horrible expectation to have. So we can see, like, I can disagree with some aspects at the same time as this person in this article, but for different reasons. Don't have an expectation that it's easier. Have an expectation that you'll be healthier. That's better, because I am absolutely healthier, but my life isn't really easier because I'm doing more in life and trying to get more off the ground. That's typically how it would work, in my opinion. I would suddenly have all that thinness by as a person in this culture, desirability, admiration, and better treatment in nearly every corner of life, from the doctor's office to my place of employment. Giving up that dream was not in the slightest bit easy for me, and I imagine it isn't for you either. So what I will say is that tying thinness to all of this, it does not take into account how you act, your personality, your natural beauty, and all these different things that may not be affected by losing weight. So it is definitely a toxic ritualistic mindset to put everything into thinness. It's not ever the whole picture. It's one part of the picture. And again, when we focus too much on body image, it can be toxic. You have to be a little careful, because that's not what this is about. It's about health outcomes for the most part. Like I said, when you get to other levels, it can be a different story. Like I said, I will talk about that stuff when I get there. I'm not there yet. It's a very different part of the journey, and I'm going to talk about things as I go through this. So, yeah. Anyways, because again, people may say, oh, Alex, well, you're not thin, so you don't get it. But I am much thinner than I used to be. So you have to acknowledge it's either a continuum, or maybe this glory of thinness is not real. You know, it's not going to solve all your problems. It's not going to do all that. It's just not the case. I don't think. I'm not seeing it. Okay. Giving up that dream was not in the slightest bit easy for me, and I can imagine it isn't for you either. To help you process your emotions about giving up the thin ideal and dieting, it can be helpful to consider the stages of grief model described by Elizabeth, I don't know how to pronounce, Kubler-Ross. If I get it wrong, I'm sorry. I guess I failed as a psych major. You will likely find the stages she described, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, familiar, as they have permeated popular culture in the more than 50 years since she conceived them. While they were originally conceived in the context of dying patients, they have become popular because they feel relevant in many other situations as well. Let's explore how they apply to the process of adopting a health at every size belief system, I guess. No, it's important to understand that we don't really move through the grief stages linearly. Usually we will bounce around, and I also think we can occupy some of them simultaneously. Use this list to identify the emotions that are most present for you and find resources to help you. Okay. Denial. When we first learn of health at every size, fat liberation, and body trust concepts, it is easy to fall into denial because they contradict our dominant cultural narrative about weight loss and health. No, we often think it can't be true. It's because it's not true. So that part is your brain being rational because it's very obviously not true. So once again, this is a gaslighting statement. This is trying to convince you that you're crazy, basically, because you're having a natural inclination to see facts and see that this isn't real, what they're saying. So you have an immediate denial of something that's very obviously untrue. When we reach towards the familiar territory of diet culture because it's all we know and because it's so seductive, we reach back towards the familiar territory of diet culture because it's all we know and because it's so seductive. While in denial, we forget that dieting has been a fair weather friend. We remember the intoxicating joy of our weight loss successes, but forget our misery when the scale is higher than we want it to be. The pain of being to the point of feeling unwell, or the despair of realizing we're starving but have already eaten our maximum number of calories for the day. So what this person is describing is definitely not correct. Okay. When you are losing weight sustainably, you don't ever have to starve yourself. That's not real. If I am ever very hungry, I always describe it as if it's a 4 or above, I will eat something because it's my body telling me, hey, we need some more calories today. I'm not actually in a famine. I'm not actually in that type of situation. I can actually eat more if necessary. If it's very little amount of hunger and it will usually pass, then I won't, because it doesn't really matter that much, because I know I've had enough and whatever for the day. That's what I would suggest. So if it's really that bad, your calories may be too low, which can happen. And people always forget you can always lose 1 pound per week. That number is usually highly attainable for most people. You do not have to do 2 pounds per week. So, and you certainly don't need to do more than that. And as far as eating too much, you don't need to do that. You don't. So it's not a requirement. Okay. It is normal to experience denial and to flirt with the sweet promises of diet culture over and over again as you heal your relationship with food and body. But as you learn more about why dieting doesn't work, find a community to provide support, and exercise your self-compassion muscles, you'll spend increasingly less time in denial. So I find this interesting, the framing of self-compassion as giving up on getting healthier. That's very interesting. That is some 1984 BS. Advice for when you are in denial. Remember it's normal to fall back into denial repeatedly, particularly given that it's so hard to extract oneself from the dieting culture present in our families, workplaces, and friendship groups. Yeah, so I would say that I would almost say it's more likely that you're in denial if you think you can't lose weight, because you're probably taking a bad approach or you have a bad mindset, to put it lightly. So it's like, I think it's really important, if you're really, really struggling with the concept of losing weight, you really need to focus on caloric realism. It's a very, very important concept that I have carried through the entirety of my weight loss. It is the idea that calories matter, that how much you're eating matters a lot, and that essentially you need to eat enough. If you eat a certain amount, even if you were to go over your daily calories for the day, you're not going to gain a massive amount of weight. That's not how it works. That's not caloric realism. You know, if you have Christmas and let's say you're super morbidly obese, you eat a lot on Christmas Day, maybe you ate about tops 4,000 calories. I'll be generous. Okay. I think that could happen. Maybe you ate a lot. Okay. If you ate a lot, if you ate 4,000 calories on Christmas, maybe you get on the scale the next day and you'd weigh 10 pounds heavier, but most of that would be bloat and even the food inside. And maybe you gained some weight that day, but you didn't gain 10 pounds. That's caloric realism. That has helped a lot throughout this journey, is keeping that in mind, because a lot of times people, they have kind of delusional ideas about how much they're eating, and it's not good for this type of thing. So anyways, educate yourself as much as possible about why weight is not an indicator of health and why health is not an indicator of worthiness. So I don't think health is an indicator of worthiness. I think that's a very strange concept that they're pushing. I don't think most people naturally feel that way. It's more about not taking your health for granted or not having it and wanting it back. That's what it's about usually. So I wouldn't even entertain this. Just cross it off the list. Just cross it off. This, why weight is not an indicator of health. Wrong. If you're obese, it is an indicator of your health, period. It's too much. No. Remind yourself of the ways in which dieting and fat phobia have harmed you. Make a list and review it as often as you need. I would say maybe do a pros and cons list and think of all the ways that being obese has harmed you. See what's worse or, the same, basically. Anger. Sometimes the anger phase of our grief process manifests as anger towards ourselves for falling prey to diet culture. However, it is important to know that you are not to blame. You were taught that you weren't worthy unless you lived in a small body, and that message was reinforced in millions of small and large ways over the course of your life. So I think what they mean by this is reality is a thing. So when you see that it's more difficult for you to play a sport as a kid because you're fat, they say this is society telling you that you're not worthy. No, this is reality showing that it is an issue to be obese. That's what that is. So that's not some message that's being pushed upon you. That's physical reality. That's, I once read an article about this guy. He was playing sports in elementary school and he was kind of chubby and he got too fat in middle school and he quit all his sports because the obesity made it to where he could no longer do the sports anymore. So he literally had to give up something he loved to do, and he had to give up a part of his lifestyle because of his obesity. That's just a reality of what's going on. It's sad. It's very sad. And it's unnecessary. No matter what this article says, it is totally unnecessary. I will repeat because it's just so important. None of this is your fault. I don't know what is with the issue of obesity, but there is an obsession, an absolute obsession in online discourse, in institutional discourse, in a lot of people's minds to get any kind of fault out of obesity out of the question. It is an obsession. And it's, in my opinion, the exact wrong approach. It's the exact wrong mindset. It's the exact wrong thing. You know, what I will say we could point to as far as external factors is people should not be socially ostracized for getting to a healthier weight. People should not be discouraged actively from getting to a healthy weight. You know, these types of things are the things that I hear in comments on my channel and that I have experienced in certain ways. I mean, not super extreme or anything, but I'm just saying we shouldn't have this culture that enforces fatness, that pushes people to stay overweight. I have felt the sting of social pressure from weight loss many times throughout my weight loss journeys, which many of which were failed. As I've described, I have a lot of toxic ritualistic behavior in my past. And especially when I was younger, those social costs were so horrible for me as a 20-year-old, as a 21-year-old. It scared me so much. And that should have never happened. I shouldn't have had a best friend that was scared of me changing in that way and wanting to sabotage me. I shouldn't have had somebody that I was romantically interested in pressuring me to lose weight at the age of 21 just to get freaked when I reached a certain point and then turn against me. Like, these kinds of things should not be happening in culture, but they happen because our culture is toxic in regard to this issue. So yes, while it is your fault for the most part, you know, it's your responsibility, we will say. We can change the language. It is your responsibility to deal with your obesity. There are definitely external factors. And of course, we can get into the environmental factors as well, like things that are in our food, additives, etc. Those are also valid. But in a lot of cases, we can choose differently. You don't have to go to fast food, for example. I know that's quite a novel concept, but there's a lot of social pressure for a lot of people to continue to eat fast food. There's something wrong with you if you don't want to. So I think the social pressures, they're a lot more of a thing in regard to external issues around getting healthier with weight loss. That's a lot more of a factor than almost anything else, except for your own personal responsibility, which is a huge part of it, obviously, because you could have everybody supporting you in your life, but if you are not doing it right, you will still fail. If you do not do what you need to do, you will still fail, because it does go back to you at the end of the day. And no matter what the social pressures are, you can go against them. And that's also true. So ultimately, we cannot control how other people talk about this issue, how other people treat others with this issue, but we can control our behavior and we can still prevail no matter what. So even if you have zero support, you can still do it. I would advocate to find support. It really helps, but you could still do it without it. That's empowering to realize. Okay. All of this said, I believe it is really healthy to get angry at the culture that led you to this place. I can agree in some regards. There is no shortage of things to get angry about. Examples include that we are all sold lies about the feasibility of permanent weight loss, despite a lack of trustworthy evidence, leading to the existence of a 70+ billion diet industry. That we were likewise told lies about the health benefits we would accrue by being thin. This is major gaslighting. So I have had a lot of health benefits from getting thinner. This is major gaslighting. Is it perfect? No. I'm even going to do a video, as I said, about my experience with morbid obesity versus super morbid obesity and what was different, what was better, what was worse. Yes, some things were worse, but I'm going to talk about it. But overall, it was much better. It's a fact. So this is a blatant lie. That we were taught to conflate being healthy with being worthy and safe from an early death. I don't know what this goal is. You guys can help me. This is very dark. This is some of the most manipulative language around this issue. It is so disgusting that from a very young age, we were manipulated into believing that we are not worthy of love unless we fit the thin ideal. I think what's more likely is you were traumatized in some way and then you believed it. Believing you're not worthy of love, it's kind of a trauma response, and it can manifest in different ways, and it has to do with an insecure attachment, and there's so much that goes into it that it's beyond the scope of this video. But yes, it can become focused around weight, but honestly, weight could have nothing to do with it. So that's a whole other issue. That our patriarchal capitalist system sets unattainable standards that leads to SH. So I would disagree with this. I don't really know what patriarchy has to do with it, what capitalism. The only thing capitalism creates an abundance of food. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about. But under capitalism, you have personal responsibility. You can make decisions. That's the whole point. You can choose what to buy and what not to buy. If you were under another system, you wouldn't be able to necessarily choose what to buy. So it's a whole other discussion that I honestly do not want to get into. I'm just saying, please make the connection. Because the capitalist system is not immune. Like, this article is probably an attempt to make money. There is an anti-diet industry, just like there's a diet industry, but we can choose what we want to pay for, or you can choose neither. What we want to pay into, buy into, etc., or you can buy into neither, which I don't personally buy into either one. Nobody's made a dime off of my weight loss. So I think that this is like really weird. And as far as this, like, I don't know. I've been single throughout a really big part of my journey. So I don't know if they're saying I'm patriarchal on myself or something. I don't know. I don't really understand it. It's bizarre to me. I could go on and on and on, and chances are you can too. These are all valid things to get angry about, and expressing that anger is an important part of healing. Okay. Advice for when you are angry. Okay, let me see if I can at least agree with some of this. Let yourself truly feel any anger, frustration, resentment, and express it in a productive way. Okay. I find physical releases can be really helpful, like stomping your feet, throwing something, screaming, tearing paper, or scribbling or writing aggressively. Okay, I think that's a bit much, to be honest. I don't think you have to do all this. This is like a tantrum. But I do agree with feeling anger. I told you guys a lot. One of my biggest triggers with my toxic ritualistic behavior was I feared my own anger. I had such a fear of my anger, and I tried anything to stomp it down or to not allow it to be expressed or dealt with, or even like anything, because it scared me. But part of my ultimate recovery was allowing my anger to come out and allowing myself to feel my anger truly. And it was very healing. Now, what they don't ever say is that anger runs out. It's like a faucet. The water runs dry after a while. It ends. Anger ends. That's what I always say. So if it goes on forever, then it's becoming bitterness and resentment. And it's like starting to become something else, and you got to change it because that's not anger anymore. Get creative and think of what would feel best to you. The only wrong way to do this is a way that hurts someone else or destroys something you don't want destroyed. Everything else is fair game. Also, rage rooms are totally a thing now. You can rent time to go smash stuff that isn't yours. What an incredible anger outlet. Okay. I would just suggest exercise if you were going to do this. You could use exercise as a part of your weight loss journey. There have been times when I've done that, but again, I haven't really used anger as a motivation in weight loss, but for some that may work. But I know for me, it can help me to be physically active, to walk a lot, and to actually go to the gym and lift weights and stuff. It does help as a physical outlet because sometimes you can just feel very physically frustrated. Anger can point to things that we value and want to protect. It can also help us figure out where we might need boundaries in our lives. I agree with the boundary statement. Consider what you are angry about and what it shows you value. Consider what you want or need to protect, something that currently isn't being adequately protected, either via a boundary or some other means. I think anger also deals a lot with feelings of unfairness or justice. So there's a lot that goes into anger. But I would just say you got to process stuff, It's a whole other topic, though. It's kind of irrelevant. Try using journaling or free writing as another way to process your anger. Free writing is just a variant of journaling where you turn off your inner censor and write whatever comes to mind without any editing. Yeah, that might work. If you feel so inclined, use your anger to motivate yourself to participate in activism. Oh my gosh. There are so many ways to be a fat activist or ally to fat people, including sharing educational materials with others or asking a fat friend if they need help researching restaurants with comfortable seating. So I don't know. To me, this is kind of exploitative to try to encourage mentally unwell people to participate in your political thing. I think that's wrong, in my opinion. Again, remember that this is not your fault. Get angry at society, not yourself. See, again, with that, not your fault. That's like a big thing in a lot of fat acceptance stuff. If you're continually feeling bad about succumbing to diet culture, consider writing "This is not your fault" on a post-it and putting it somewhere prominent in your house to remind yourself, like your bathroom mirror. I would say put a post-it on your bathroom mirror that says "Don't stare." I've had to do that. I was kind of staring at myself the other day and it was not good. So I would put one that says that. It's not good. It can make you anxious. Bargaining. Bargaining is negotiating, trying to come up with a trade or a substitute to pursue instead of taking the difficult road of opting out of diet culture. A classic example of bargaining is, okay, maybe I'll just go lose some weight and then pursue intuitive eating afterward. Another might be saying something like, it's okay that those people are fat, but not that I'm fat. So I don't know. This is weird. I think this is just weird all around, but let's see what they say. Advice for when you are bargaining: continue your education. Much like in the denial phase, remind yourself that the science shows you cannot lose weight permanently, even if you think it will make you feel better. So I want to know, why do you guys think the science says this? I want to know what you think. Examine the reasons you want to bargain. What do you believe will be better about the thing you're trying to substitute? What ideas do you hold that can be challenged? For instance, are there things you're holding yourself back from doing until you're in a smaller body that in reality you could do now? So I agree with some of this. I don't think you need to hold back. I mean, barring any physical or health limits, I think that you should live your life to the fullest extent. I've always advocated for that. If you're super morbidly obese, it's going to take years to lose the weight. So live your life throughout these years and don't hold your breath. I don't believe in holding your breath weight loss. I just don't agree with that whatsoever. So that I agree with. All the other stuff, this is all just weird. This is like a lot of inner noise that you don't really need to listen to. Because you don't need to bargain with this crap. It's just crap. So I wouldn't bargain with it at all. Reach out to a fat positive helping professional to start to heal the wounds of your body shame and the impacts of fat phobia. the impacts fat phobia has had on your well-being. Yeah, I would just say don't focus as much on your body. Just, I really am a believer in body neutrality. I really, really am. Because it is just so much better. Depression. Realizing that weight loss is not possible and that you've wasted so much time in an effort to be thin and healthy inevitably results in sadness. Much like when dealing with anger, the important thing here is to allow yourself to feel the emotion of sadness. Okay, well, sadness is common within weight loss too. So, because it affects your hormones and it can make you more sad, especially from a bigger size. So, I would just say, understand that sometimes it can be a hormonal thing. It might not have to do with anything. That can be the same with anxiety. It might not have to do with anything. So it could just be a hormonal fluctuation due to the weight loss. But you have to reflect on like events that are happening in your life and you know what's going on, if you're currently in a deficit or not. Like all these things, they can affect like how you would deal with these issues or like try to see if it has to do with the weight loss itself, because that can be the case, especially from a big size. So you have to like realize that that could be part of it. As far as being fat, you could be depressed just because you're fat too, because there's a lot of scientific connections through many studies that have shown that depression and obesity are linked. They're very connected. So you could be depressed just because you're fat. That could be another thing, because, you know, it could be that you're cut off from certain aspects of life that you want to do because it's not practically or physically possible at the weight that you're at. Or it could be because of the actual hormones going on with your body with the excess of adipose tissue. Either way, depression can result in weight loss and in being super morbidly obese or obese, really. So, anyways, advice for when you are depressed. Remember again that this is not your fault. They are really trying to push that message. You were inculcated in all of this from a young age. There is nothing to feel guilty or shameful about. Find community who can understand what you're going through, share with them, and know that you're not the only one who has gone through this, okay? Remember that you have a lot of power despite what our culture tells you. Society tells you being fat is terrible and awful, but there are so many ways to have caring, kind relationships with our bodies. You can have an amazing life in a fat body. So this is slight gaslighting. I would say that it's usually temporary. That's what I would say. And temporary in a way where it doesn't need to be that temporary. You know, turning 40 doesn't need to be like a literal coffin. Okay. But for a lot of these fat activist types, it can be that way, or it can be like your whole lifestyle has to change drastically when you hit 40. Like you hit this massive wall. It doesn't have to be that way. So, you know, anyways, this part too, society doesn't have to tell you. You already know. You know. Okay. Allow yourself to genuinely feel your emotions, including sadness. Talk to your friends about it, and or reach out to a trusted helping professional who can support you as you truly feel it. I think this is very good advice. So that part I think is good. So, okay. Acceptance. Acceptance is where we have to come to terms with the idea that we won't achieve the thin ideal, the reality that dieting doesn't work, and the fact that we've spent a lot of time getting to this place. The tricky thing about acceptance is that it's not a permanent destination we all land at forevermore. When we're triggered in various ways or go through high stress periods, it can be easy to re-experience denial, anger, depression, and bargaining again. That's interesting. So there's no end to this. That's kind of their cop out, where it's like you can accept it, but it's not real. So I think to me that's encouraging that self-deception. So it's like sometimes the mask or the matrix you're creating in your mind, it will crack, or you'll see some gay YouTuber actually losing the weight and it can be like, oh, I'm triggered now, you know? They can be like, oh, because you see that the reality is not lining up with what you believe, and it can be a huge trigger. I get it. But at the end of the day, this is encouraging you to lie to yourself again. That's what that is. Let's call a spade a spade. That's incredibly normal and nothing to be ashamed about. But the nice thing is that the stronger our roots in acceptance grow, the easier it is to remember our new values and return to this place. So the more we gaslight ourselves and indoctrinate ourselves into this, the easier it will be to continue to lie to ourselves. We tend to spend longer and longer periods in acceptance over time. Yes, especially if you cut out everyone who disagrees with you, which a lot of you guys do advocate for. Advice for the acceptance phase. Enjoy yourself by deepening your sense of embodiment and your relationship with your body. Explore different ways you experience pleasure. Okay? It's pretty benign. Consider activism. There they go again. Trying to push mentally unwell people to be an activist. There are others that can benefit from hearing your journey and your message. 3, continue to seek out fat positive, HAES-informed community. Belonging to a community that is fully accepting of fat people is incredibly powerful, and that can help us deal with various fat phobia, diet culture stressors as they arise. Okay. So that's that. Try to find people who agree with you, kind of thing. Okay. In closing, some reassurance. The fat liberation, health at every size, body trust journey is not an easy one. Why? If it's not easy, then why do it? What are you getting out of it? Grief is a natural and normal part of the process. I hope that these ideas can help you identify and honor your very valid emotions as they come up along the way. I also want you to know that even though this process can produce some difficult emotions, the peace and liberation that can await us are incredibly freeing. Yeah, this is the kind of pseudo-religious talking point. It's very interesting. Super interesting. So let me know what you guys think about this. I will get going. Thank you so much for listening. I will be back tomorrow. Have a good rest of your day, night, whatever. Peace.